So hello everyone. Today we'll be working with Creo to teach everyone how to get used to basics of this device and how to control it. And we'll also be using these basics in order to create a basic flower picture using the tools and tricks that we learn. To start with, let's open up a new file, seen here in the top left. You can see here there are a lot of options, but for now we'll just work with the default template. So you can just name the file whatever you want, or you can just leave it as default and click OK. And now we see the general layout for Creo. Yours might look something more like this. I've changed my settings a little bit, but let's get familiar with the layout here. So here we can see three different planes: the right plane, the top plane, and the front plane. And you can see that when you select them on the left side here with the model tree, you can click on them and they'll light up green. And these are the three planes that we're drawing in order to create our different models. You can also click on them here in the graphical interface, and it'll do the same thing. And over here you have all the options that we could do, including sketching and extruding, which we will use as well. So for now, I'm going to teach you the basic controls. If you have a mouse, then you can hold down on the left mouse button and drag it to select anything you want on the screen. Here you can see what you select and drag over will turn green. If you hold down the middle mouse button or the scroll wheel, then you can see if you drag it, it'll be able to rotate around the screen. If you hold down the middle mouse button or scroll wheel again, while also holding down shift, you'll be able to pan around the screen a little. And of course, if you use the scroll wheel, you can scroll in or out at the exact point your mouse is hovering over. So let's begin by drawing a basic geometric shape, in this case a cube. I'm going to start by drawing on the top plane. To do this, we first have to select a plane to draw on. Again, you see here that I've highlighted the top plane and it is green. And then we're going to select sketch. You can see that here. Once you do that, it should automatically go into sketch view. But if it doesn't, if it is still in this 3D view, you can click sketch view right here, which will turn it to a two-dimensional orientation. So now we're just going to create a simple rectangle using one of the options available here. Let's see this. Now in order to do this, you first left click, then release, then drag. And you can select how big that rectangle will be. Once you're satisfied with it, left click again, and then middle click to deselect the rectangle option, and it'll automatically turn purple, indicating that that option is enclosed and that there are no gaps in this rectangle. So we're just going to leave this at default dimensions and click OK. And if you did it right, or if everything goes right, then you should have a good sketch, which you see here in the model tree. It says sketch 1, and we'll see that the green rectangle we just created is highlighted. Now we're going to extrude it in order to make it a solid. And for this, with sketch 1 highlighted, if it isn't highlighted, then we just simply click it again. We will click extrude. Now it automatically extrudes at a certain dimension, which is random, but you can change it easily by either 1, clicking on this yellow ball here and dragging it, or you can go over here where it says depth and control it manually. For example, selecting 100. Right now it's extruding as a solid, which means it extrudes it every single particle, so to speak, of that rectangle. But we can also extrude it as a surface, where instead it extrudes only the outline that we drew. Of course, if you were to 3D print this, this wouldn't really come out to anything. It would instead just be a thin line of material. So for now, we'll just go with the solid. And now we have a simple cube, or rectangle shape. Now we can just click OK to finalize that. And you can see that here, now that it's gray. What we're going to do next, we're just going to create a simple hole in it by drawing a circle in it. While there is a hole tool in Creo as well, for now we'll just use it with the circle tool. So now, instead of selecting a plane, we'll instead select a surface of the solid that we just make. As you see here, if you click on it, that surface you click on should turn green. And once you click on a surface, you can then click sketch again. And once again, it'll go into sketch view. And then we're going to select the circle tool. And in the middle of that, or anywhere you like, you can once again left click once, release, drag out, and then left click again. Then click the middle mouse button or the scroll wheel, and it'll turn purple. Now I'm going to click OK. And once again, that circle is there, highlighted green. And we're just going to extrude it. Now by default, it'll extrude it outward as a solid. What we want to do in this case is to use actually remove material. You can see here, if you select this option, what it instead do is that it'll take any sort of material that is in this path and it will erase it. Now right now, it's extruding out of the rectangle, so it's not erasing anything. But by clicking this little purple arrow, which determines the orientation in which it extrudes, we can see that it'll come the opposite direction. Right now, it is still extruding as a solid. Oftentimes, it'll automatically switch to remove material if it thinks that it is going through something, but it didn't in this case. So we just click again, remove material, and now it is. Once again, you can click change the depth to make sure that it only goes part of the way through, or you can just go all out. And so that's a basic geometric shape, a rectangular cube-like thing with a circular hole inside of it. But we're going to make something a little bit more complicated and a bit more freeform, in this case being a flower picture. So to start with, you can either create a new file, or you can just select all the things you selected here, right-click, and delete. Okay. And now we will select a plane again, for example, the right plane, and we're going to go back to Sketch View in order to begin our flower picture. We click Sketch, and now we will instead begin using lines. The first thing we will do is create a line down the center line. And you can see that if you notice, Creo will generally try to guess what you are doing and automatically snap to the point that you are trying to put your point on. So right now it's snapping to the center line, and it'll automatically place my point on the center line for the line axis. And sometimes this can be useful, but sometimes we don't want this. And in this case, if you don't want that, what you can do is hold down Shift, and the snapping tool will be disabled. For now, however, let's go ahead and put that line on the center line. In a similar way to how we create the rectangle and circle, you left click once, you drag it to where you want to be, left click again, and in this case you see here that it's automatically trying to create a new line. But once again, clicking the scroll wheel or middle mouse button will stop doing that, and then we can do it again in order to deselect the line tool and go back to the normal select. Now let's take a look at the dimensions. You might see these dimensions here if you scroll in are little blue numbers that define how long this line is. And remember that by default Creo uses inches, so this line is 191 inches, which is obviously far too much. So let's instead change this line to something like 5 inches. In order to do this, what we have to do is click on this number 2 times in a row. And then we can just change it to 5 inches. Now it has zoomed in a little bit, so let's zoom in some more to see the line. If you click, you can drag this number as well in order to make it more consolidated. And we also have another dimension that determines how far away the top of this line is from the center line. We're just going to make this 2.5 and center it around the origin. Again, you double click the number and you select the one you want. Alternatively, in order to zoom in automatically, you can click this button here, which is refit. You can see that it'll zoom in automatically. And let's make this a little cleaner. And we're now going to begin the top and bottom ends of the flower picture. First, we will go to the bottom end of this line. And again, with the snapping tool, if you hover over the line, then it'll kind of show you the different options. In particular, if you hover over the middle or bottom part of the line, it'll show you the ends as well as the center. Make sure that you hover over this end, which means that it shows it'll snap to the end of the bottom of the line once you click on it, and then you can drag it out to the right. And then just create another line. This is 3.22 inches. Let's just make that 2.5 or whatever you feel is right. And we'll repeat the process at the top. Again, just hover over it to make sure you select the end. Then drag it out, deselect, and make that 2 inches or so. And now we're going to create another line that goes at an angle from the bottom one. Again, we are working at the right end. We click here, and then we draw at an angle. Here we have a new type of dimension, which is the angle dimension. And this determines the angle between these two lines, which is right now at 34.52 inches, or 34.52 degrees. We're just going to double click on that and make that more like 36 degrees. And this part here determines the distance from the top of this line to this one. For now, we'll just leave that as a soft dimension. Alternatively, if you really want to change it, then what you can do is sort of click on this endpoint where around the red cube is, and then just drag it. Not only can you change the angle, but you can change the height as well. But again, let's keep that 36 and make sure that it goes up a little bit by, say, 0.8. You don't have to change it right now again. But let's select 0.9 for now. Next, what we're going to do is connect this part and this part with 2 different arcs. So first, we're going to select the arc tool here. We're first going to click on the end of this arc and then release. Then we're going to select the end point of the different lines slightly inwards. You see that it should be to the left of this end point. And then once you click again, you'll be able to define the radius in the arc of it. Let's make that a little shallow of an arc. So then we'll deselect the align tool, and then we can create another arc connecting this one. This one should bend inwards more like this. And again, like before, it should turn purple once you are done. Now let's see what this looks like when we finally make it into a flower picture. And for this, we actually only need a few more steps. First, let's click OK on this. We can see that sketch 1 is still highlighted. While it's still highlighted, we're going to use the revolve tool. And what this does is that this, similar to the extrude button, will take this two-dimensional shape and create a solid out of it, this time by revolving it around a common axis. So we click on revolve, and we select the axis around which the solid will revolve around. In this case, you should be able to select the center line, which you drew initially on. And once you click on it, it'll automatically revolve 360 degrees. You can see here we have something resembling a flower picture. Let's click OK for now. And then we're going to make the inside hollow simply by using the shell tool. To do this, you click on the top of the flower picture, and then you use the shell tool. Here the thickness determines how thick the walls will be. For example, like this thick, or like that. Let's make this 0.2 inches thick. And then just click OK. Now we have a hollow picture. And in fact, you can just use this as a cup or something, but we still need a handle. And for that, what we're going to do is use one of these planes that bisects the flower picture. So just for me, this will be the right front plane. Now, just as before, we're going to sketch on it. And then we are going to draw an arc around these two sides for our handle. You can see that if you hover over the edge of it, it'll automatically take that line that you used to create the little flower picture. So once that happens, you click on it. Once again, you click once. Then you drag it to where you want the other end of the arc to be. You click again, and then you define the radius. Let's say something like this. Then we're going to click OK. And now this is just a two-dimensional line. And we're going to have to use a sweep tool in order to make it hollow or solid. The sweep tool is right here under the revolve feature. So we click on this. And now we have two endpoints and a little arrow. This arrow determines the origin of our the tool that we will use. So what the sweep tool does, it takes a two-dimensional shape that we draw, and then it sort of protrudes it along a trajectory that we define. In this case, we're going to draw a circle, and we're going to extrude it alongside the trajectory of this arc. So in order to do that, we already have our trajectory, so now all we have to do is create a sketch. We see here that we selected this top part as a sketch, but it doesn't really matter. If you want, you can click on this, and it'll select the bottom part. So let's click here, this little sketch, pen and pad, which is the sketch tool. And then it'll automatically, once again, go into that two-dimensional view. It's a little hard to see, but there are two purple lines here that sort of cross to determine where the origin is of this new sketch. So we're just going to draw a small circle there. Let's say 0.1 inches or 0.2. Now we're just going to click OK. And we see there that it has extruded alongside the trajectory. If you look closely, what you might see is that it didn't extrude perfectly. So there might be a sort of invisible edge where it didn't kind of extrude into the solid itself. What we can do here is use the merge ends tool, which will sort of automatically try to merge with the solid that it's nearest to. This may not always work, but as long as it's a relatively simple solid, then it should be fine, as it is in this case. So with that done, we can just click OK. And now we have a flower picture. So as you can see, the dimensions and how your flower picture will look up depends on what you start out with. For example, you can very easily turn this into a more normal cup rather than a flower picture by changing the original sketch. In order to do that, all you have to do is click on the sketch here. You see that it's highlighted. And once you do this, your toolbar should pop up. If you click on this little orange ball with a pen on it, you can then edit the definition. And this will let you change the different dimensions of the shape or how you want it. If you do this, assuming it isn't too complicated to change, the Creo will automatically regenerate the feature to try to guess what you are trying to do. So in this case, for example, let's say we want to make this not quite as far out. We can drag it along to make it, say, 2.22 inches. And then if we click OK, then we see the feature was redefined successfully, and the bottom part isn't as long. Alternatively, we can make this arc here more smooth. And now Once again, it's changed. We'll also do another thing in order to round out the edges. If you saw before, it was quite sharp. We're going to add a fillet. This sort of takes two lines and rounds them out, sort of equivalent to the round tool. You can see that here. All you have to do here is simply select the fillet tool, left click on one line, and then left click on the next one. And it'll do it automatically. Then middle click again to deselect that tool, and you can drag it to sort of change it. Or you could just go here. This is 0.02 for now. Let's say 0.05. And it changes a bit. And let's try to do the same thing here. Sometimes it may not do this due to the constraints that exist. For example, in this case, I believe it is too sharp. Let's try making this angle a little bit not as steep and see what happens. In this case, it was able to successfully delete the dimension in order to get rid of that constraint. And now we have a fillet here. Let's make some more adjustments slightly. Again, you can change it however you want. In this case, my Creo kind of went crazy. But by doing Ctrl-Z, we just easily go backwards. So once you have something you like, click OK, and it'll be redefined. You can see now that there are rounded edges. And with this, we've finally learned how to create a basic flower picture. And you have finally learned how to use the basics of Creo, and are able to move on to higher and better things.